You're listening to In Sickness, a podcast about caregiving with Allison Breininger and Justin Bima.
Good morning.
Good morning, Allison. How are you doing?
I'm good. I just wanted to say that so many of you have, so many of the listeners downloaded and have listened to the last episode in which I kind of, put it all out there, told all kinds of vulnerable things, and people have been reaching out and saying supportive things. And I just wanted to say it's been a really lovely and supportive week getting those responses. And so
that's great. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you to everybody who's listening who listened and has reached out, because it wasn't an easy thing to put that out there into the world. And so it feels good that it was received in the way that it was. So
yeah,
I appreciate all of our listeners and how kind and helpful they are. Yeah. I think it's also, and this could be a whole bunch of other episodes, but just the fact that so many people said, yep, me too.
Right.
Me too. And so I think for all of those people listening who it resonated with, because they too have gone through burnout, they too have had physical symptoms, we're here with you. So yeah. How about you? What's going on over there?
Well, it feels like spring is finally here, which has been kind of a big mood lift, I think.
Yeah.
Getting out of kind of some of the rain that just kind of lingers forever. So that's been nice. And then one thing is I've had to, unfortunately, go back to the office a couple days a week for work, which it's been an adjustment. I'm still adjusting. It's a big shift after years of just working from home, which is wild to think about. But one of the things that I've been able to do is I've got a lunch break now where I have no other responsibilities. There's no caregiving things I can do when I'm away from home. So I've been kind of out exploring kind of the local parks that are near my office and some trails and seeing some birds and just kind of getting outside.
Nice.
And that's been really good from a mental health perspective to get that fresh air to just walk.
Yeah.
And it's, I think, another thing that is kind of another benefit of the treatment that I went through is seeing the desire to get out and do things like that, which, a couple months ago wasn't there.
Right.
So that's just also been kind of encouraging in that sense.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
It's interesting because, you said you're back at the office and I groaned, but there is, I do a lot of work with people around caregivers who are working, working in addition to being a caregiver.
Yeah.
And that is a benefit, right? Is that when you work outside the home, there is this separation.
Yeah.
You can't, like you said, you're on your lunch break. So you can't just run in and make Sarah lunch and set up an infusion. You cannot physically do that.
Right.
And therefore there is this freedom. There is this separation. So what does that felt like for you to I have an hour?
I mean, that part's felt really good. I think it's still, because I know before the pandemic and working from home and all of that, work, one of the things about work that was I don't know if I want to say positive, but a benefit or something is that it was a break from caregiving. It was, that chunk of time where that wasn't, those responsibilities weren't there in the sense that I physically couldn't do those things.
Right.
Because I'm at work. And so that was kind of a break. And then that's one of the big things that was difficult about transitioning to working from home is where are these lines and everything?
Exactly. Those blurred lines.
And then after years, again, crazy to think about, of doing that, I just have really loved just being home. And it's a more, I don't know, relaxing or fun, whatever, cozy atmosphere to be in. And I've figured out kind of how to balance sitting down and doing the work and then getting up and, doing something with Sarah, whether that's a caregiving thing or a non-caregiving thing. And now it's kind of I have that 3 days a week and then 2 days a week. I'm I get that break. So I don't know. I'm still adjusting to this, to being in the office. And I think maybe as time goes by and I get more used to that, I'll feel that sense of a break a little more. It's still kind of this is weird sitting in a cubicle all day kind of feeling.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Is there any piece of life goes on without you? 2 days a week, you're not there to do the things. So how do the things get done?
Yeah, that's true. I think I haven't thought about that as much, given that with my going through my TMS treatments, having a little bit more offloaded already. That hasn't been something I've thought about as much. But yeah, things, again, it's a reminder that I don't need to be here necessarily doing all the things all the time for like things to be okay.
Yeah. Can you make a tattoo or a plaque of what you just said?
Right. Yeah. We don't need to be doing all the things to be here for things to still be okay.
Right.
Yeah. Which is actually kind of a transition into something else I've been thinking about.
Yeah. Tell me.
So like we always, as caregivers, there's like so much that we always feel like we have to be doing. And like there's all of these things. And there's just this familiar sense, I know for me, I think, I mean, I've heard it from other caregivers, and I think it's a pretty common feeling, is that we're just treading water. And that like we're just like doing everything we can just to keep us afloat, just to keep our lives, the person we're caring for. And there's just all of these things. And there's just this constant like feeling like we're slipping, or we're getting behind, or we're, we can't take a break, or things are going to go under. And so I've been thinking about that, just this feeling of treading water, of being overwhelmed. And mentally, we want to jump quickly to like problem solve that. And like, okay, well, what needs to get done? Prioritizing things. Can we bring in help? How do I get out of this situation? And instead of jumping right to that, kind of thinking about like, just what does that feel like to be in that place, and kind of think about that a little bit more. And so like, first, like to acknowledge the fact that if we are treading water, as it were, and I mean, we can overwork the analogy, but like you're doing a lot of things. Like if you're treading water, you are keeping things afloat. Maybe not everything's getting done, but like needs are getting met. Things are happening. And so like like acknowledging that like you're doing a lot of work, and it's what you're doing is really hard. And like, you can pat yourself on the back for like all the work that you are doing.
Yeah.
Even though it often, for a variety of reasons, never does quite feel like it is maybe enough.
Right. Can I pull out the analogy a little bit further?
Yeah, sure.
Just because I love analogies.
Yeah.
And so I think like in an active moment, like when there's something, currently happening in your caregiving life, my caregiving life, I feel like that's more than treading water, right? Like that is like swimming. That is like the strokes, the drowning, the like flailing, right? And so when I think about treading water, it's more about like, that's when it's like the quiet moment in the middle, right? That's like a Tuesday. That's like a regular day in which nothing is happening. And I think that's where it feels like, is this enough? Like, should I be doing more? I'm used to flailing. I'm used to swimming actively.
Right.
If I'm just, quote, just treading water here, am I doing enough? Because I'm used to doing so much more. But when you think about the act of treading water, like it's exhausting.
Yeah.
And it's funny to think about, like from the shore, it looks like you're not really doing anything.
Right. There's that comic of like two ducks or something, and like
yes, you
can't see that the one underwater is just like furiously like paddling or something. Yeah, exactly.
And so people can't see that, but it's a lot of work to keep your body. I wish people could see me because I'm flailing here with I'm swimming and
right.
But like it takes a lot of energy to keep your body afloat and sort of just that maintaining like in the one spot.
Right.
And I'm not a swimming expert, but I wonder sometimes, like, is that even more work than like the big strokes of like gliding through, just keeping yourself in that spot? And so yeah, it can feel like, oh, there's not an emergent situation right now. I'm quote, just treading water. Am I doing enough? Am I really a caregiver?
That word just always comes up like, oh, I'm just, this or just that. But like, no, you are treading water and you are a caregiver, and like this is hard and all of that. Yes. Like you don't have to qualify that.
Exactly. So I got to talk to someone the other day who listens to our podcast, and she has recently started caring for a family member. And she said, but no, I know how much you do, Allison. And so I consider you a caregiver, but I mean, I don't do as much as you do. So I don't know if I'm a caregiver. And I was like, oh, friend, we should not use me as the gold standard. Like, you're only a
Right.
caregiver if you get to like this much, because there's caregiving is, there's so many different versions of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want anyone to disqualify what they're doing just because it doesn't look like what my life looks like or what your life looks like.
Mm-hmm.
We're painting the pictures of our lives, but caregiving can look like so many different things. But I think that she was feeling guilty.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, well, I mean, mine's not as hard as yours.
Right.
And I think that guilt, that piece of am I doing enough, is such a theme with caregivers.
Yeah.
Of, can I even call myself a caregiver? Can I say that it's hard? Am I doing enough? If there's not an emergency today, am I still a caregiver? Right? Like,
right.
Oh, so we're carrying, we haven't talked about the backpacks full of rocks for a while, but
right.
Imagine it. And then imagine guilt.
Yeah.
Why do we do that? I'm asking you.
Oh, I don't know.
Sort of rhetorical, but also why?
I think part of it, like, there is this, as you mentioned, the sense that we're like, are we ever doing enough? And I think that some of that stems from this sense that, like, we actually can't, for the most part, like, have any control over the person we're caring for's like actual health conditions or diseases or anything. Like, that's not something that we can, like, maybe there's like treatments that we're helping manage to control that, but like whether or not their body improves or declines, like, that's completely outside of our control.
Right.
And like, if we had control over anything in our situations, like, I think that is the one thing we would feel like we would want control over, is to be able to, like, help see improvement or like do something there. And so I wonder if, like, we sort of compensate by like trying to, like, what else can we control about the situation in our lives? Like, I can't control this one super important thing, but like everything else, like, what can I be doing and what can I be taking off of the plate of the person I'm caring for to make their life easier, or all of those things.
Well, I think even so, you said we can't control the health of our loved one. And I would bet that most of us as caregivers think that we should be able to.
Right.
Like, our brain knows that we cannot.
Right. If something happens and they're getting worse for some reason, it's like, well, what am I not doing?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. And I hear that from people all the time. People who their person has passed away, people who, whatever, that they think, they say the word guilt. That they, an untrained, like a not medical professional, feel guilty that they could have done more. They should have done more.
Right.
And so I think that we shouldn't too quickly say, like, well, we can't take care of that, because I think our brains know that. But I would guess that all of us as caregivers, in our guts and in our hearts, feel like, oh no, but we should be able to control or support if they're getting better or worse.
Right. I think the other piece that with like doing everything too is like our culture, like, puts such a, like, your value as like a person is based on like what you can do, based on like your productivity, based on like the progress that you're making. And in, like, for my life, the progress that like culturally we're supposed to be making is like stopped. Like, yes, we got married, but like, the neck of like having kids, of like having a house, of like traveling as a family, like all of that, like, just stopped. And so like, that's part of it, is like, okay, we're just sitting here treading water, like not going through these stages. And so, yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to, in this, like, as part of feeling like there's all these things you need to be doing as a caregiver, and like acknowledging also that like your situation like has put you in a place where there's things that you're missing out on, or things that you're not going to be able to accomplish in life, and like giving yourself time to grieve and mourn those things. I think is important as you like, are feeling overwhelmed and feeling like I have laundry to do. I have to clean the house. I have to, work on the budget. I have to do infusions for my wife. I have to go to work. I have to do all these things. And like, I wish I had time for these other pursuits. And like, the life situation that we're in. We just don't always get those other opportunities. And like, it's okay to stop, to pause and be like, yeah, that sucks. And I'm wish that things could be different, and like to grieve.
Absolutely.
I think is okay and important.
It's so true. So true. And I hate that we have this picture of like, okay, so you have to get married and then you have to get the kid and then a house, blah, blah, blah. Because you think about like, you've got this big fancy job that you are working on these big projects, and I don't understand it, but it sounds cool. Right. So, and the fact that, like you have a dog and
right.
Like, and we have this podcast, like there's all these things. And so like, just because the path didn't take that direction,
right.
There's other things. And it's not like, sometimes I think about people, cause we quote, just have one kid, right. And she's a teenager and she's pretty easy. So I think, right. Well, what am I doing? Look, all these people have all these kids and, and then I'm like, you know what I'm doing instead?
Yeah.
With all that time and energy, caregiving.
Right.
So it's not like, oh, you slacker, your life just stopped. It has continued to go.
Right.
And is full of things. It's just, full of busyness and tasks and things like that. It's just that what's on your plate is different than what you thought it was going to be.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's part of what plays into all this is just that natural sense of comparing ourselves to like other people's situations, and whether that's comparing our situation to those who are peers who are not caregivers, who are like getting to experience the life that we maybe wish we would have been our life. Whether that's comparing our situation to other caregivers and seeing like, oh, so-and-so is in a much more like dire or overwhelming situation. So like, I shouldn't feel like I have it that bad because like, or like, this person who's a caregiver is posting and it seems like they've got things under control and they're on top of things and I don't. And so like, why is that the case? And like, I should be able to like be on top of things. And that's just a trap that is gonna, I don't know, nobody wins in that.
It's true. Yeah.
I guess with caregiving, with being a caregiver, with your life situation, like you can own and acknowledge and like state that what you're in is hard, and like without caveats that like someone else has it more challenging or someone else has it more together. Like your situation is hard, and you like, you don't have to be comparing that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think there's so many different pieces there, and it's funny because people have said this in a very kind way. It's not like, oh, I'm glad to hear that you basically had a meltdown, Allison. But they have said like, everything on social media looks so shiny. And I don't feel like I try to make it look shiny. I feel like I try to make it like this is the real thing. But they're like, you always look cute. And I'm like, well, sorry. But, I think people are like, it's good to know that even you, who seems shiny, have these hard times.
Yeah.
Because we look at you and people have said that, like, and comparison creeps in, and it's like, well, how is she doing all these things? And it's like, I never want that to be the case. But I think that's just how our brains work. And so how can we kind of shut that down,
Yeah. I heard it phrased somewhere. I heard this, that like specifically with like social media or something like that, like don't compare someone else's on stage to your backstage, because like what you're seeing is what someone is choosing to present. Yeah. Like, and some people do a pretty good job of like trying to be raw and like with sharing about caregiving, like, yeah, we're in the thick of it. And like, but still it's like, you're not seeing the 95% of like everything that's going on. And so like, it's not worth trying to make that comparison. And then in doing so, trying to minimize what you're feeling, because you shouldn't feel like you have to minimize your experience, because caregiving is a real challenge, and you can own that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking about how guilt shows up in so many different ways in comparison. So my caregiving isn't as hard as hers. I'm not doing as much as he is. I'm not doing as much in general. I'm not doing, or we're in a quiet season. So am I even a caregiver? And so just to go back to that quiet season thing, or even if it's a quiet hour or a quiet day, so you could think about, like, you got these lunch breaks now.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that you're like, I'm going to go do something that's going to fill my bucket.
Mm-hmm.
Because you could, technically, and I'm glad you're not doing this, say like, I'm going to spend this hour researching.
Right.
The cure for, you know what I mean? Like, no.
I didn't think about that. Should I be doing that?
No,
Allison?
nope, you should not. You should not. Delete that. I said you should not do that.
Okay.
But, like, I think that we don't do that. So I don't know if you get this analogy, but I always picture those. They were pencils when I was growing up that had these little tiny little bits of lead, like little plastic things with lead. And you pull the top one off and you put it in the bottom and you push it back up. Yeah. You with me? Okay.
I'm with you.
Listeners from a certain generation will understand what we're talking about. And so I feel like that's always the case, right? Like someone was telling me the other day, her husband got clear scans. Great. Mm-hmm. So basically she got to pull that worry off, put it down, but then whoop, up came the next thing. Because she was like, oh, well, now I looked around and realized I've been so worried about the scans. I haven't done this and I haven't done this and I haven't done this and I haven't done this. And so I exactly same. Mm-hmm. I always think like, whew, cross that off, but then the next thing. And so I try to tell myself, and I'm not successful at this yet, but I try to think, okay, if that second pencil lead was not such a big deal that I could survive without thinking about it, worrying about it, doing it, while I was focused on the first pencil lead, then it's probably okay.
Yeah.
No, I don't know if that's, I try. That's what I'm trying to tell myself. But just because I think there's always something we could be worrying about. There's always something we could be doing. And so I think that's a piece of it. How can we, in that quiet moment in between, you just get a clear scan. You just want to bask in that. Like, how can we take that moment to bask in it? How can we still ask for help or still do things that are good for ourselves to fill up our buckets in those quiet moments?
Yeah.
So that when the harder moment inevitably does come, we're a little bit more boosted. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm wondering for you, because during your TMS, you did delegate some things. Right? And we talked about that. And so now that your treatments are about to be over, I'm wondering, are you going to be like, okay, I'll take them back? Or are you going to keep them delegated? Or how are you going to handle that?
Right. Yeah, that's a good question. I think on the one hand, like some of the delegation or redistribution of kind of like roles or responsibilities, like part of that is like Sarah has been doing more to try to offload stuff from me. And as a result of that, like she's been spending more time in bed and it's been exhausting for her. And so like that's not a sustainable situation necessarily. And so there are things that I'll be taking back in regards to that. There are other things that, maybe I won't necessarily feel like I have to be the one to always be doing it. And I think that there is a feeling after this experience that there's less resistance to the idea of delegating something or leaving something undone, maybe even like it's so this doesn't even like maybe if this doesn't maybe even need to get delegated. Like it just if when we get to it kind of feeling. So I think I think it's less for me about the specifics of who's going, this person did this while I was out. And so like, is that situation going to, what's going to happen specifically there? And more about like a little bit of a shift internally to like being able to let go and delegate and like know that things will be okay. And part of it too is just seeing, that I can have time to do something that I need to do for myself.
Yeah.
And to have that space to do that and things happening and still getting done.
Yeah. That's huge. And what I hope for you is, I hope for all of us, because you were like, okay, for these number of days at this certain time, I have this scheduled thing.
Yeah.
So it's pretty black and white.
Right.
And I wonder about how all the rest of us can also like not just wait for a moment when it's black and white like that, but, be doing the delegating and the whatever, regardless.
Right.
I want to go back though for a second to ask you, how did it feel to see that? So Sarah was, you said, picking up the slack. I think those were your words for you. But then what, as a result, was more bed bound.
Right.
And so what was it like for you to know that in a way, like your needs made her more tired, if that makes sense?
Right.
Like, how did that feel for you?
I mean, it's hard to like, as someone who is normally like in the caregiving role in that dynamic, like to know that what's going on in my life is negatively impacting her health. Like that's a hard thing to like feel okay about. And I don't know that you have to feel okay about it. Like,
right. Yeah.
this is a temporary situation that I'm going through, and it's hard on me. It's hard on Sarah as a result. So I think knowing that it was not a permanent shift was helpful in that regard. I think also feeling very grateful that she is in a place where she's well enough that she was able to do a little bit more, to want to offload some things from me, and to honestly to be in a dynamic where I felt cared for by her was like a really beautiful and important sense to like break down that like I'm the caregiver in this relationship, but to like have that flipped, to like be reminded that our relationship is so much more than just, there's so much more to it than, you know, my role as a caregiver and her as someone who's sick. Like that's part of our relationship, but that's not the entirety of it by any means. Like there's so much more to it.
Yeah.
So that was another piece.
That reciprocity there. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I want to just acknowledge that you said something that was like so ridiculously healthy, where you said it feels hard, and it's okay that it feels hard.
Right.
Or something like that. Like, ooh, that's good.
Yeah. I think we can want to like a situation like, where it's difficult that what I'm going through is having a negative impact on Sarah. And so, we want to like problem solve, like, okay, how do we not have that? Or like, how do we somehow justify that or make it like, it is okay that because of this, like, but that we can just pause in that moment and like, this is hard, that this is the situation, and that she's taking a hit because of what I'm going through, and like, and to stop there, or at least to pause there.
Exactly.
I think is important. And that's part of, to circle way back, like with this feeling of like treading water, and that being this challenge and frustrating or overwhelming, or all of these different kind of like situation, and wanting then to be like, this is the situation, and so I can't take a break and get the space that I need, or like, how do I get myself out of this, or how do I like do more, or like all of this jumping to the problem solving and the thinking, but to like to stop and like pause, and like, I feel overwhelmed, and I feel like I'm just treading water, and we're not making any progress, and it's taking all the energy I have to stay afloat, and to sit with that. And like, what does that feel like? And like, to like mourn the things that are there, and to have compassion on yourself that like, you are doing a lot of work, an enormous amount of work, and like the emotional toll and the physical toll like is extreme for what you're going through. To just, I don't know, like give yourself a hug in that moment, and just like, give yourself that space to feel that way. I think as I was kind of thinking through this kind of topic and all of that, I think I was thinking back to like the most time when I felt like things were like overwhelming, and there was no progress being made, and like it was taking everything I had just to like stay afloat. And back when Sarah went through like the 3 years of being like basically bedbound, and you know, she had the energy to go to one appointment a month, and like I had to help her get dressed for that appointment, and I had to help her walk down the stairs and help her walk to the car, and like sometimes she needed a wheelchair, and or sometimes she needed her walker, and we'd get back from that appointment, and like sometimes she would have to like crawl up the stairs because she just didn't have the like the strength for that. And you know, she wasn't able to shower without my help, and it was just this like we were in the midst of it, and things were not getting better. And at the time it was really difficult to like feel like I was losing control of the situation, or like,
Mm-hmm.
what more should I be doing? And I think
Mm-hmm.
like looking back on that now with this perspective, it's like I have so much more like compassion for myself in that situation,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that like I was in an impossible situation.
Yep.
And yes, I was treading water, but I kept us afloat.
Yep.
We didn't go under.
Yep.
We got through that.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of things didn't get done. Yeah. There were, I don't know, maybe there were things that could have been done differently. I don't know, but like
Mm-hmm.
we came out of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think that like just remembering that the way things are at the moment maybe isn't the way things are always going to
Yeah.
be. And that,
Yep.
I don't know, with caregiving, that's maybe not always, doesn't always feel that way, because like, you know, it's not that the person we're caring for is they're suddenly not going to be sick.
Right.
But the way that we're relating to our situation
Mm-hmm.
maybe can change or shift.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think even in little micro pieces,
Yeah.
like there might be an hour that's better, or a day that's better, right? For you, it's a whole season. You know, I didn't know you back in that time, and I just want to go back and like give that Justin a hug.
Right.
And so like that's a totally different season that you were in at that point. And I'm glad that now you can look back with compassion on that, Justin. And I hope that you had some in that moment as well. But a phrase that I hear you keep saying is progress. Like we weren't making any progress.
Right.
And I think that's a very like Enneagram 3 thing to be saying, actually, because we're all about productivity. And so it's like, what does progress even mean? Right. Sometimes it's just like, get through the day.
Right.
And for families like ours, that's a pretty big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, like you said earlier, I think that's a very like American thing to be like, what's new? What's progress? What's happening? What are you doing? And doing sometimes is just like, look at us. We all made it through the day.
Yeah.
Yep. And there weren't any emergencies, or maybe some days there are. And even still, we made it through. Sean's so cute and sweet that at the end of the day, sometimes he just looks at me. He's like, you did it. And I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, all of it. All of it. You did it. You did it. And I'm like, yeah, that's true. We did. Look at us. Here we are. At the end of the day, we made it. And so I think to feel like we don't always have to have progress.
Yeah.
Just the survival in any family right now. But I think especially in our families like ours, where we're caregiving, getting through the day is a big deal. And so to celebrate that and to rest when we can rest, to fill up our buckets so that we're ready. When you were talking about that delegating thing, I was thinking about, because, you know, last week I talked about that the day that I was not able to go to one of Sean's procedures. Yeah. Because I had this enormous panic attack. And so thinking about, are there ways that I can preemptively schedule that kind of thing? So can I
preemptively schedule your panic attack?
My brain, wouldn't that be nice if I could be like, here's a free window I have. Could it be from 10:04 to 10:07 on this day? That'd be great.
Yeah.
So like it was fine that his brother took him.
Yeah.
And so are there things like that? And it, you know, part of my brain is like, sure. Another part's like, well, but if I'm just sitting here, I may as well go. Or it's the kind of thing where it's like, I know that Sean loves his brother and his brother will do a fine job. I also know that Sean loves me more and will be like more comforted if it's me. And so I don't know. I've been struggling with that. It feels hard to just be like, oh, well, let's have Adam take you and I'll just sit at home and read a book. Right. And part of me knows that like days like doing that are going to support me in not getting to where I was in March. Yeah. But it also feels hard to not have this big excuse for like, well, why didn't you go? I don't know. I wanted to stay home and read my book, you know, like, so both for like, I think the world to be like, wait, why are you not going? But also I think, I mean, Sean would get it, but I think he also would be like, oh, but I feel better when you're there. Yeah. And so I don't know how I'm going to, I haven't done that yet. I haven't delegated in now yet, but I also am trying to find ways to not get to where I was. And that might be one of them. I mean, they scheduled 3 more endoscopies in the next 6 weeks. So we have 1 this week, you know? And so it's like, do I do all of those? Maybe. Yeah. I think like for you or for other caregivers, like thinking about like, what can I delegate? Like, especially like when things are
are good.
Yeah.
Like, it's one thing to like be in that crisis mode and like I have to delegate.
Yep.
But like when things are good, like just try it.
Yeah.
Just like pick an appointment for your case and like, I'm going to stay home from this appointment.
Yep.
We're just going to like, I'm not making a permanent shift that like,
yeah,
I'm only going to every other,
right,
you're
right,
not,
right. Yeah.
you're not saying that this is what it's going to be going forward, but it's you can try things.
Yeah.
And see how it goes, see how you feel about it as you're at home. And I imagine that it would be challenging to like turn off that part of your brain that's like, there's nothing wrong with me at the moment. Like, why am I not there?
Right.
But also like, if someone, I don't know, you can treat that as a moment that is something where someone else can take him to his appointment.
Right.
And someone else is like handling the like caregiver responsibilities in that sense. And you have that free, hour, 2 hour, whatever.
Yeah. Yep.
To have that space.
Yeah.
And that could be, a moment to recharge or rest or, whatever.
Right. Even I've been going to acupuncture, and last week I was just like, basically like, Sean, get in the car, you're coming too. And I had a moment when I was there of like, oh, this was my special place. And so I said that to the woman, because he and I were obviously in separate rooms, and she said, I wondered about that. So I said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to lie on this table and I'm handing him to you. Like, I am not his caregiver for this hour. You are.
Yeah.
So he'll be in his other room and you'll be working on him, and I'm not going to worry about it because I need to be in here healing. But and so she had said, like, how can we continue to make this for you? And I said, because I'm going to hand him over.
Right.
I'm going to hand him over to you, and in a way it was kind of nice to be like, oh, well, look at that. I just handed over the reins, and he's capable hands. And so I think, I don't know if it's that kind of thing. I think, like you said, also thinking about like, it's a gift to his brother or to my mom to give them ways to be involved and to help. But I might need a little coaching from you as we go, because I think it's not going to come easily to me, because even the staff are so used to me that when I'm not there, they're like, where's Allison? And if he says, oh, she's at the spa, like,
right.
I want to make sure that we talk for a minute about supporters, because I think that a lot of the guilt can come from well-meaning folks. So even that kind of thing, like if someone says, oh, where's Allison? Like, why did she not go to the appointment? Or all of the like, fill up your cup garbage that people are always spouting, which is true, but just makes me crazy. So I'm just thinking about how supporters can help caregivers not feel guilty.
Right.
And I think some things are like, I love it when people offer help or give us a treat or whatever, when it is a quiet time and I didn't even have to ask for it. It's just a random old moment and someone leaves me a bag of my favorite potato chips on the front steps, or sends us a DoorDash gift card or something. That to me acknowledges like that they see us, and they see that even on those like just treading water days, that it's a lot to be us. Right. So I think that's one thing. I think another is like, if someone asks for help, to not try to be like, oh, well, is something wrong? Oh, is something, just to be like, yes, of course. Sure. I think too, if they see or hear caregivers talking about or feeling that they are guilty, like, well, I didn't, or this, or I should have, to like try to shut that down. Try to be supportive of them, of like, you are not medically trained. So it's the fact that you missed that you didn't diagnose him is perfectly reasonable. You know what I mean? What are other things? Are there other things you can think of, the ways supporters can help caregivers to release some of this guilt that we walk around with?
I think one thing is you mentioned specifically like offering help when things are not like in crisis, but I think also, it's one thing to, as a supporter, like acknowledge the difficulty of caregiving when things are challenging, but to also like remember that can be helpful to hear when things are going smoothly, because I mean, that doesn't mean things are easy. And to feel seen in those times too helps you to realize like, yes, I am still doing a lot, even though we're not in a quote unquote crisis, and to help help in that. I think having that perspective and feeling seen there is helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think being careful what you're saying or what advice you're offering.
Mm-hmm.
I think as supporters, offering advice is something that can be real fraught.
Yep.
Oh, I think we've all, as caregivers, gotten some, let's just say, unhelpful
Yep.
advice from people. And, saying things like, have you tried this? Or
right.
What about this? Like, I don't know, that can often then feel like should I be doing that? Is this another thing I should be looking at?
I think that invokes guilt for sure.
Yeah.
Because it's like me saying to you, well, you haven't tried that? Oh, what's wrong?
Right.
He's not eating kale for every meal.
Right.
Like, then clearly you're failing,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think you're right that advice often invokes guilt. Yeah.
Yes. So just to be careful, to think a little bit through, I guess, if you're about to offer advice to a caregiver, to kind of pause and kind of think through what you're going to say before you offer that, in the sense of like, is this really helping, or is this going to feed into the guilt as a caregiver?
Yep. Yeah. That's good advice.
Mm-hmm.
So I think caregivers who are listening, just know you are doing more than enough.
Mm-hmm.
If it's in a quiet season, and even if it's a quiet, no matter what season you're in, you're doing more than enough.
Yeah.
If it is a quiet moment and you can do something, it doesn't mean you have to fill that time and space with something else related to caregiving. Instead, maybe use it to fill up your bucket.
Yeah.
So that you are prepared for the next inevitable thing that might be happening. But just know that nobody wins, as you said earlier, Justin, if in this comparison race.
Right.
So
yeah.
Everybody's life is hard in its own way. And you're doing enough. You're doing more than enough.
Yes.
And just know that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. A couple quick things I just wanted to remind folks of is that I do offer one-on-one caregiver coaching. And so if anybody wants to have, if you're a caregiver and you want to have further conversations about this personalized, you can certainly reach out to me. Or if you're a supporter and know somebody who might be interested and want to buy them that as a gift, that is something that's available. And so I know that someone said to me the other day, well, I didn't want to talk to you about my caregiving stuff, even though I knew you would get it, because I knew you already had enough on your plate. But once I realized that you wanted to do it, because this is part of what you're doing in your work at Negative Space, then that felt really freeing, because I didn't want to, burden another caregiver, but knowing it was a space for that was helpful. So anyway, just wanted to let people know that you can reach out to me if that's something that you are interested in.
Yeah. How would people reach out to you?
Yeah, good question. So you can, email the In Sickness email address. You can email me through the Negative Space, which is thenegativespace.life. You can contact me there. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook at NegSpaceLife. So whatever format feels easiest to you, just reach out and send me a message, and I would love to hear from you. So yeah,
that's great.
All right. Well, let's go into a week where we leave the guilt behind.
Yes.
And I'm going to practice this delegating thing and see how it goes.
Okay.
We can check back.
We'll check back in and see how it does.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Good to talk to you. Thank you for sharing and for the conversation.
Yeah. Thank you as well.
All right. See you later.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to In Sickness. Find us online at insickness.care or on Instagram at insicknesspodcast. You can send your questions and comments to insicknesspodcast@gmail.com. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with a friend or fellow caregiver, or leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Thanks for listening, and take care.